They said the sea was quiet that night, but silence is never real before a fight. Somewhere off Venezuela's northern coast, a cargo vessel drifted under false lights, carrying more than anyone was meant to know. Officially, it was a maintenance ship bound for the Orinoco Delta. In truth, it held the country's captured president, guarded and hidden inside steel compartments below deck. No one expected an attack there, not after weeks of chaos and airstrikes. But before dawn, the calm began to break. Shadows moved across the horizon, and what followed was not diplomacy, not negotiation, but an operation designed to erase witnesses and rewrite control in a single night. At 2:47 a.m., the sea off Venezuela's northern coast looked calm from above. No flares, no radar spikes, no visible movement on the surface. But under that silence, something heavy was coming in from the east. A formation of blacked-out helicopters was flying low over the water, barely skimming the waves. Their rotors cut through mist and salt, pushing sound downward into the surf. The operation was already in motion, and the clock had started ticking. No one on shore yet knew that a head of state was inside the perimeter of that plan. Hours earlier, intelligence channels had confirmed what had been rumored for weeks. Nicolas Maduro was no longer inside the capital. After the strikes on Guana, after the collapse of power grids and networks, the president had been quietly detained during a transfer inside the fortified zone west of Caracas. What followed was not an official handover, but a shadow arrangement. A vessel, disguised under commercial registry, was set to move him south under cover of darkness. Few people knew the route. Even fewer knew that the ship would never reach its next port. The vessel's designation was coded Meridian 12. It sailed under an unmarked flag, carrying only skeleton crew and security from an unidentified contractor. To the public, it appeared as a cargo maintenance ship heading toward the Orinoco Delta. In reality, it was a floating cell. Below deck, compartments had been converted into secure holding spaces. Cameras covered every angle. The president's capture was meant to be temporary, part of a larger negotiation sequence that was never made official. But the secrecy cracked fast. Venezuelan intelligence intercepted fragments of satellite traffic, suggesting a covert U.S. extraction operation was already planned. At 10:20 p.m., the ship was still maintaining course. Off the radar, far to the east, a small fleet began to form. A guided missile destroyer, a pair of fast attack boats, and several covert transport craft positioned themselves in a silent line. Their navigation lights were off. Electronic signatures were minimal. From a command post aboard the destroyer, operators monitored a feed that showed the ship as a faint dot crossing into the designated recovery corridor. Orders were clear: secure the target, extract the principal, and maintain deniability. Nothing was to be left behind that could link the operation to the United States Navy or its allies. On shore, the story changed. Venezuelan counterintelligence agents received a report from a compromised satellite relay station in Falcon. The transmission was short but precise: coordinates, timing, and a confirmation code matching the intercepted traffic. Within 40 minutes, an emergency team was activated from Puerto Cabello. A detachment of Marine commandos loaded onto two fast intercept boats with orders to approach and board. They were told only that a captured official was being moved under foreign custody. No one said who the target was. They found out mid-transit when encrypted confirmation identified the detainee as Maduro himself. By midnight, the intercept teams were within radar range. They moved in total blackout, guided by infrared beacons invisible to normal surveillance. The air was heavy and still, broken only by engine vibration. On their tactical displays, the faint outline of the cargo vessel appeared, a long shadow against the sea's flat reflection. Radio silence was ordered, but heartbeat monitors and encrypted pings filled the quiet. In the distance, flashes of light on the horizon signaled something unexpected: air movement. A helicopter formation was descending fast from the north, flying below 100 feet. That was the first sign that they were not the only ones hunting that ship. Inside the command deck of Meridian 12, tension was high but contained. The U.S. Special Forces team on board, drawn from an unacknowledged maritime unit, received final confirmation to proceed. Their mission shifted from secure extraction to defensive hold. They were to maintain the ship's course until reinforcements arrived from offshore. Below deck, the detainee remained in isolation, surrounded by armed guards. The plan was precise: keep the ship moving, maintain communications blackout, repel any unauthorized approach. They did not expect direct confrontation this close to the Venezuelan coastline. The first visual contact came at 12:42 a.m. Venezuelan fast boats broke the horizon and approached in staggered formation. Their onboard radars were blind due to interference flooding the frequency band, but visual optics picked up silhouettes along the waterline. Inside the ship's Combat Information Center, screens flickered with proximity alerts. Defensive positions were manned, flares were loaded but not yet fired. Overhead, the approaching helicopters adjusted their course. 3 of them were carrying extraction teams, while 2 provided overwatch with sensors and targeting pods. The sky was still dark, but the operation was seconds away from breaking cover. When the first warning shot went off, the calm shattered. A Venezuelan boat fired a short burst across the ship's bow, tracer rounds arcing over the deck. That was enough to trigger full defensive protocol. The U.S. team returned controlled fire, targeting engines and weapon mounts. The distance was short, the water between them lit up with muzzle flashes. Within minutes, the night turned into a pattern of light, smoke, and mechanical noise. Radio intercepts recorded overlapping calls, commands in Spanish, acknowledgments in English, and static that made translation impossible. Above, helicopters opened formation, lowering fast ropes toward the aft section of the vessel. The boarding phase had begun. The fight tightened quickly. Venezuelan Marines managed to attach magnetic grapples to the hull, climbing under suppression fire. Several reached the deck before being forced back by flashbangs and automatic bursts. The air grew dense with burned powder and salt mist. Sensors on board the U.S. ship recorded multiple impact points, but no structural compromise. On the bridge, the team leader received live updates from the destroyer offshore. Reinforcements were en route, but minutes mattered. Inside the vessel's lower deck, the secured compartment holding Maduro was reinforced and sealed. Guards were ordered to stand by for immediate extraction if the perimeter failed. At 1:07 a.m., a secondary threat appeared. A Venezuelan coastal radar detected unidentified aircraft approaching at high speed from the east. For a moment, local commanders believed it was another strike package similar to the one that had devastated Ciudad Guana weeks earlier. Orders went out to activate surface-to-air defenses, but confusion within the network delayed response. By the time the radar locked, the contacts had already dropped altitude and disappeared under the coverage line. Those aircraft were US F-35 strike elements providing overwatch configured for electronic suppression rather than engagement. Their job was to jam Venezuelan comms and keep reinforcements blind. Down at sea level, the fight entered its most violent phase. Boarding ladders clashed against metal hulls. Small arms fire echoed through corridors. Venezuelan troops who breached the deck found themselves under fire from multiple angles. Their radios failed mid-sentence. Infrared strobes from the U.S. teams created confusion, making it impossible to distinguish friend from foe. Within 15 minutes, the first intercept boat was burning, drifting sideways into the waves. The second managed to pull back, carrying wounded personnel and a single captured soldier from the initial assault. The third was last seen maneuvering south before disappearing from radar. On the main deck, a brief pause came when one of the helicopters attempted to land. The downdraft cleared smoke just enough to reveal the damage. The ship's outer rails shredded, deck plating scarred, blood on the stairs. A team of operators rappelled directly onto the command structure, covering each other in short bursts. Once contact was re-established with the offshore command vessel, the extraction sequence was approved. The objective had shifted again, now to evacuate both the target and the wounded personnel. A secondary transport craft was redirected toward the coordinates, its signature masked by radar clutter from ongoing interference operations. At 1:23 a.m., the Venezuelan command boats regrouped and launched another assault wave, but their timing was late. By then, the helicopters had already begun lifting off, carrying the detained president under guard. Ground teams deployed smoke grenades to cover withdrawal, while demolition charges were placed along key access points to prevent boarding. The explosions came in a sequence, controlled, precise, designed to disable, but not sink. Fire rolled across the deck as the last U.S. operatives climbed aboard the extraction craft. The remaining Venezuelan units, unable to pursue without radar or air support, broke formation and retreated north. In the aftermath, sensors from the destroyer confirmed minimal casualties among U.S. personnel. 12 Venezuelan combatants were confirmed lost or missing, and several were captured during the close engagement. The ship, heavily damaged, remained afloat but adrift. At dawn, drones recorded its silhouette from high altitude, black smoke rising from the stern, waves breaking against a tilted deck. The captured soldiers were transferred offshore for interrogation before being moved to an undisclosed holding site. No public statement was made. Official reports from Caracas described the event as an act of piracy. For local observers along the coast, the only visible sign of the night's operation came hours later when fragments of burned debris washed ashore. Pieces of uniform, spent shell casings, a section of damaged hull plating. Fishermen who approached the area reported oil slicks and floating wreckage. Military patrols were deployed to block access, but rumors spread faster than censorship could contain them. By midday, word was circulating that the president had been moved again, this time under foreign custody. No one could verify the claim. State broadcasts repeated only that unauthorized maritime aggression had been repelled. Satellite images captured that morning showed the truth more clearly. The Meridian 12 was no longer transmitting. The destroyer and its support craft were gone, leaving behind an empty corridor of sea. Electronic traffic from Allied intelligence suggested that the extraction team was already beyond regional waters. Maduro's location was reclassified at the highest level of secrecy, with no confirmation or denial issued by any government. Inside Venezuela, command posts went on high alert. Defensive systems were reactivated, radar coverage expanded, and all coastal bases were ordered to standby readiness. The war had not officially restarted, but the temperature had risen again. By evening, power remained unstable across multiple provinces. Civilian transport was restricted. Internet and phone signals flickered. The narrative from state channels shifted focus away from internal failures toward a message of resistance and defiance. Officials declared that every act of aggression would be answered, that sovereignty would not be compromised again. Yet inside those same command centers, senior officers reviewed footage from the night and saw the imbalance for what it was: an opponent who could strike anywhere, anytime, without warning. The next move was already being planned, but no one could say by whom or how soon it would come. At 11 p.m., the last update was transmitted from a secure line at Puerto Cabello. It contained no orders, no explanation, just a single coded phrase used only after high-value extractions. Asset transferred, status uncertain. Then silence. For those who understood the system, that silence carried weight. It meant the mission had succeeded in its own narrow terms. The detainee was gone, the operation complete, and another invisible line had been crossed in the dark.